they were first putting this railroad through. This is the mock, right where you, in fact, I'll find out what room you're in, and I'll tell you if that's the actual most haunted spot or not, but I won't ask that till later.
Yeah, hardly I think we should go.
Long about, when they were building, when Norfolk and Southern's putting this railroad in, you know, if you're out west and you wanted to know who built the railroad, treated badly, it was probably the Chinese, right? I'll tell you, we'll have a story next week. Because they were exploited and paid nearly nothing. And they had no family here, and if they got killed, they simply buried them over on the side of the track. A lot of them. Well, here, there were many Chinese immigrants. There were a few. Not many. And the folks the poor folks, other than local folks who were very poor, who helped build this railroad, to lay the track on it, now not the actual railroad, but the conscript type workers they had, were gypsies. Honest to God gypsies, you know, who came over a generation earlier from Europe and were still living a quasi-nomadic life. And they got hired on to help build this railroad. And there were 6 or 8 men laying the track with hundreds of other men as it came out of Mullins and up towards Slad Ford. And as those men would, and on down toward Pineville and on up toward Herndon. And those men, when they died, if they didn't have family reasonably close, they'd simply find, if you go on this railroad, you'll find a point, maybe, or a flat place along the creek bed like this, and they'd simply dig a hole, bury him, have a little service. A year from now, where did we bury him? Well, it was either here, or maybe it was down, I can't remember for sure. But lo and behold, there was a friendly guy who was super friendly, one of those gypsy fellas. Everybody liked it. And he would always play pranks on people. Like you'd be going along and something would splash in the creek, or you'd walking off to get busy that day. You think, oh, you didn't see anything. He'd be hiding up in the woods, going a rock in the creek, trying to scare you. Or he'd be hiding behind the bushes, you know, and he'd leave early and be out there. And the crew's starting to walk out toward the tracks, and they'd see something shake. Or something would grab them as they walked by a tree, and the last guy get tripped up, something grabbed him, he'd scream. It was always their buddy. Well, their buddy got sick. Didn't come to work one day in a little place, a little shack built down. He didn't come to work. Well, after they all worked that day hard, got back, they went over to check on him, and he had died. Well, what they did with him is they took him out to a little flat place on the side of the Wyandotte River and put him in the ground across from the railroad they were left and buried him. Now, many, many years later, and all of the time in between, people would walk along the railroad track or along the bottom and fish. And they would talk about getting ready to fish, be sitting there, and something would splash in the water beside them. And they'd look all around, none of their friends were there. Sometimes that happens, it's your buddy. Sometimes it's not. Because then they figure, and the story got going, it was that guy. He was still pranking, still doing that kind of thing. Well, eventually, they decided to build a grade school. And they built it in the bottom where he was buried. And whilst they were digging the foundation for it, they dug up part of rotten wood and just a small part of a mostly decayed skeleton. And the story was, of course, I bet we know who that is. We finally remembered where he was buried when we dug him up. Well, they went ahead and interred him somewhere. I believe, and what I heard was, there is another cemetery up where the ball field is, up on where some houses are now. About half that cemetery is taken up by housing around yards. And buried him up there. But, of course, that's not where he liked to be. He was working on the railroad. So about the time they opened up that grade school, kids would occasionally get in trouble. They were saying they were walking down the hall and someone would reach out and grab hold of them. Or people, or some kid occasionally would talk about standing out behind the place, looking over the river. Something would splash and they'd run down there to see it. And every now and then they'd turn and there's this old guy standing there just looking at him. Like he was a young guy. He was dressed old. So he's still there, folks. Now that's not scary. It's not a horrible cut your head off, chainsaw cut you apart story. But it is a story about a young man who died working to build the railroads in America into the coal fields and got buried where they eventually built a grade school, which eventually closed down and became the mine. Became the place where folks come in and help us out and occasionally stay and sleep. And maybe walk behind the building and hear things splash in the river. And some folks even say every now and then, you'll be standing there and you'll just hear, and here's all it says. Hey, you'll turn. Nobody hear anything. Oh, okay, well, that's funny. You'll be standing there again. This is like the top of the school. Hey, And over the years, teachers, until the school closed, would talk about sitting there doing something, assignments, giving people at work. And some of them would go, hey! They'd look up and jump on the class until they began to notice that every now and then it went hey, and there was no class there. So if you hear somebody maybe wanting to play a prank on you, just say, hey, the little rocks are scary. Or perhaps just goose you a little bit when you're trying to go to sleep. Come on. Don't be frightened by it. It's just a young man who died before his time and was buried there and his body was forced to be moved to the upper end of the mountain. Poor old young gypsy guy. Where his family went after that, or his friends, who knows? They went on with the railroad down toward Deepwater. And then they lost their out-of-county history after that. Lord knows where they went. But then keep your ears open for the little gypsy guy.
Fair to say.
Yeah.